in every person's life who's consistently been a winner, they've had to do this at least one or two times. And we've heard the term, it's a little cliche, leave it all on the field. Okay? And sometimes you got to leave it all on the field. And that means sometimes you got to burn the bridge behind you so that there's only one direction for you to go. And to do that, you have to have the ultimate confidence in your ability. You have to have the ultimate confidence in the vision. You have to have the ultimate confidence in the Father, if you're a believer.
Welcome to the Hate to Lose podcast. I'm your host, Christian John Bradley, and here we speak to people who hate to lose more than we love to win. And today I have a great friend, mentor, met at church.
Right.
One of the most competitive dudes I know. It's fantastic.
Right.
Please welcome Jesse Smith.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here with you.
I'm kind of upset because you didn't watch the Knicks game. But the Lakers game, actually, huh?
No, I had business to take care of.
But, important.
But, I got my ESPN updates. News flashes hit me.
What again?
So, squeaker. Little drama with Stephen A. before the game.
Yeah.
Stephen A. and LeBron. But,
yeah.
But he went out and hung 31 on them anyway. So, we won the game.
It's kind of incredible. Just
That's all that matters. The W.
That's it. All right, let's jump in.
All right.
Talk to me about your upbringing.
My upbringing was, it was a good upbringing. My parents, they focused us in the right direction. From, an early age, we were in the church, we were in athletics. Our parents made us take music lessons. My brother and I even did a little theater, a little acting one summer when we were kids. So our parents were all about, developing us as complete individuals. We didn't have a lot. I was, born and raised out in the Inland Empire in San Bernardino. And that wasn't a great place to be when I was a kid.
What does that mean?
Well, it was very hood. There was a lot going on. A lot of, not good things going on in that place at that time. But there were a lot of good people there. A lot of good people in our church. My family. A lot of family members that loved and cared about us that were also there. Coaches and friends and parents of other kids that lived in the area as well. So, even if you live in the hood, you grow up in the hood, it is what you make it. I mean, and you know that. It is what you make it.
Absolutely. And talk to me about the dynamic of, you say you have brothers.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that dynamic.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of the sons. there were three of us there. Little did we know there were a lot of siblings outside of our household too. So Dad was kind of busy, kind of Johnny Appleseed kind of guy. So I did have 6 other siblings that I did not know that I didn't know about, that I wasn't raised with, including an older sister. And so we were, so it was just really the three of us, all boys in that home. With my mom and dad, we started in, all of us started in sports around 7, 8 years old. We were very competitive with each other. We were into being outdoors. We were into, activity. It's not like today. I mean, we didn't really have much going on with computers until the Commodore 64 came around. But, and even then, we were more about, activity. We were more about athletics. We were more about, just getting out and doing things.
So you mentioned you're competitive with your brothers. What did that look like? What form did it take?
I mean, I was encouraged to be the leader by my parents and to not take it easy on them, and so, I would tap them up, I would school them and, whatever we were trying to do. If we were outside playing basketball, if we were playing football in the backyard, if we were racing, when we were kids, that was like a really popular thing, is to get out in the street and kids and we would race each other, or see who could jump over these bushes over here, who could jump the highest or the longest. And so, so we were very competitive. And, with my brothers, I was like, you want the crown, you got to take it. And so, bring it. No letting people win, just, to encourage them. I would encourage my brothers, like, yeah, man, you did really good, but we'll see what happens next time, and then beat them again. I mean, I think I was in college, and actually, no, I was out of college because my youngest brother is 7 years younger than me, and he was accomplished football player, was a quarterback in high school, and I remember the first time that he beat me in a race, I was really mad.
What was that like?
Yeah, I was not having it. I was, I think I was in my early 20s then. He was in high school, and we had a race, and then I was mad, and then I went after him, and I couldn't catch him, and I was like, okay, this cat's fast. And so it was good though to see him coming into his, though. But yeah, man, I didn't enjoy that.
So what other areas of your childhood did you see like the competitive nature show up in the drive?
Well, I mean, we were expected to excel in everything. And I mean, I know that's not the norm today. Like, oh, we don't want to put that kind of pressure on our kids. We had that kind of pressure on our childhood. We were expected to excel in everything, especially, growing up in the 70s and 80s, high school in the 80s, being black kids in this country at that time, even my mom was like, like Dr. King said, you got to be better at what you do than everybody else that's doing the same thing if you expect to get what you're due. And, so that's that attitude was kind of, really promoted and, developed with us as kids. And so whether it would be, grades, getting the best grades in school, being in the top of your class, being a starter on every team, sports team that you were on and contributing to that team, contributing in the community, public service and things like that. We were, our parents taught us that we were supposed to excel at everything. And you can call it excel, you can call it winning. We were expected to win at everything. Okay? And if we didn't, we would sit down and unpack that. Okay, what happened? How come you didn't, do well in this game? How come, you didn't get the starting position for this game? How come why did you get, a B instead of an A? Then it's like, if you got a C, there wasn't any conversation. Punishment. Punishment.
So you're expected to excel in everything you do. You mentioned sports, you mentioned community service, you mentioned other things you went after. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of pressure, and also the pressure that comes with being black in that at that time. Mm-hmm. How did you handle that?
Well, I'm going to dispute you on that. It's not a lot of pressure. Because if that is established as the norm, then, you're used to it. It's not pressure. I mean, was it pressure for Tiger Woods to make a 6-foot putt? No. Why? Because he had been expected since he was 2 years old to drain a 6-foot putt. And so it really wasn't pressure to us. It's like, this is the way life is. This was the norm. This was the standard. So it wasn't pressure. I mean, if you, now that in terms of leadership, which in the case of in your home is parenting, you have to establish that standard and you have to be consistent with it. And anybody that's, knows anything about winning will tell you that consistency and repetition is key. And so, that was the standard. And so it was not, it wasn't a strange thing to us, to give your best effort and expect to come out on top because of it. Because we had been doing that since we were little babies.
So that the effort, the what you define as the norm, or even what you talked about with like Tiger Woods expected to make a 6-foot putt. Could it be the environment that you got normalized to in terms of the what I said pressure, what you say is the standard. Could that be like a pressure cooker to like breed like excellence? Do you feel that way?
It's. I mean, in a vacuum, I don't think that it's pressure. Now you can get into situations now. Um, Excellence. Excuse me. Excellence in performing your best, excelling. That's not pressure. Now the pressure comes in when you have competition, and you've gone extensively into providing training and perspectives on competition. So competition brings the pressure. And that is where, your standards and your repetition and your diligence gets an opportunity to shine through. There was never any pressure for me to get out on the field and perform. On defense, to make a play, to hit somebody. On offense, to, make a block or make a catch. The pressure becomes when, okay, well, we're playing this team. Oh, yeah, that's the team that guy Tony's on. Yeah, I'm going to have to get on him. I'm going to have to tighten up my game here. That's where the pressure comes in. In the school environment, okay, there's a new kid in my class. And man, she's really smart. I might not be head of the class anymore. So that's where the pressure comes in, is with competition. You don't feel pressure if you've been raised in an environment where excellence is expected. Excuse me.
So you said the only time you felt pressure was during competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
What were you feeling in those moments? Like, you feel like you had to win up your level? What was it?
Yeah, excuse me. It was like a thing where, I got to do, within the rules, whatever's fair, I got to do whatever it takes to win. And so you make your adjustments. If that's working harder, if that's looking for weaknesses in your competitor. And, let's face it, if there's, within reason, if there's a way to throw them off their game.
So what did that look like? Interesting.
Well, on the field or on the court, that might be like, a little trash talking. Mm-hmm. It might be a little trash talking. It might be, okay, I'll exploit a weakness. This dude can't go left. Never going to happen. And so, so I'm gonna shade him here. I'm gonna play him this way. And if he tries to go left, ball. I'm gonna get the ball if he tries to go left because he's not good going left. I mean, it's it's a balance. I mean, you don't ever want to insult anyone. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to to bring out the best in terms of competition. To kind of egg somebody on. It brings me on too. It gets my competitive juices flowing a little bit. But then again, they might also it might stress them out. And, you may get an edge there. I mean, I was, as a kid, when you first start out playing like, junior All-American football, you play both offense and defense. But, over the course of your career, eventually you're on one side of the ball or the other, unless you're Travis, playing, 80% of the game on both sides of the ball. But, so eventually I became a defensive player. And, I was 10 years old, maybe, when I read Jack Tatum's book, They Call Me Assassin. And I was like, yeah, I want to hit people really hard because that's going to make sure that I win. And, and I really believed that. And I would get out on the field, even in junior All-American, and I'd hit somebody. And then while we're down on the ground, let them know, yeah, I'm going to do that again. Because I was a kid, we weren't really supposed to be cussing and stuff, but, it got heavier over the years. Like, yeah, baby, I'm bringing that all day long, so you might want to think about coming through here again because, I think I can hit you harder. And then,
Do you feel like that worked?
with some guys, it made them up their level, but with most guys, they would drop passes, get the alligator arms, didn't want to reach out and extend, didn't want to show any ribs, I thought it was, yeah, I'm going to test you like that. Yeah, I'm going to test you like that. It's like, yeah, you come tiptoeing through the tulips like that again. Yeah, I'm going to get you.
and that is something I've experienced with you. It's the great trash talk.
I mean, it's fun.
Great. It's fun.
It's fun. It's fun. I
It's
mean,
fun.
like I said, it's not meant to insult. It's not meant to harm anybody. It's just, it's part of the game. And if you can't take the pressure, you're going to lose. You're not going to excel. And, if you lose, it means I'm going to win.
That's another one. So we can get into that one. Yeah, when we just came from an event where we were like shooting basketball, playing basketball, and just trash talking and stuff like that. And trash talk, some people do take it overboard where it's, personal insults and things like that. And what I found is, especially in competition, a lot of people who, I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but a lot of people, like, I was bowling and the guy was just taking shots at me because he felt like I was a wannabe.
Right.
And like, but for me, I'm like, I love to walk up to somebody, hey bro, like, you about to make that shot, bro. What do you I just like, I want them to come back and be like, nah man, forget that. Like, I really do want it to bring the best out of them for sure. And I also see that with you as well. And so when it comes to like the trash talk and stuff like that, like how did that start, and like how did that evolve into like what is it now for you?
Well, I think you have to have confidence in your abilities for number one. So, and you can't have that if you don't work hard at it. So I think that I don't know. I'm not saying that you earn the right to trash talk by working hard, but it's something similar to that though. It's kind of an outcropping of that. Like, yeah, man, I know I'm really good at this. I'm going to test you. I'm going to see if you're really good at it too. And, it just starts out as, little things when you're learning. Oh yeah, I'm good at this. Oh, when I can apply a little pressure, it might give me a competitive edge. And as you develop, it can get really strong. And, you don't want trash talking to get to a point where, it's insulting or someone's hurt or someone's trying to hurt you in response to it. But that can happen. And, we all know that's true. We've been in many, many times on the court where a fight has broken out because trash talking gets out of hand, or, somebody says something that's inappropriate, talks about somebody's, mother or something like that, their mama. It can get out of hand. But it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a part of, natural competition. It's like, can you do this? I can do this. What can you do? And so it just, it develops over time. If you do it in the right way, if you're a competitor in the right way, you continue to grow in that. And so I was nominated by Congressman George Brown in Riverside to go to the U.S. Naval Academy. That's where I did my undergrad, and Annapolis, Maryland. And I remember when we got there, as what we call plebes, that's what you're called as a freshman, is a plebe. And you get there, and you have no rights. I mean, at least we didn't back in the, in the mid to late 80s. You have no rights, you have no privileges. It's not like going to USC by any stretch. I mean, there were a few privileges if you were on sports teams, varsity sports teams. You had team tables and things like, which were a refuge for a plebe. But that first 2 months, you would report in July before school started in September, and basically it was like a boot camp, and you were hazed for 2 months. And every morning we would get up at 0500, and we'd be out on the AstroTurf field for morning calisthenics and workouts, and just very rigorous. And they had a shirt we all wore the same thing for one. But then they had special shirts that were like multicolored with 88 on there, our class. If you were called what they were called a super, that means you were just out there just crushing it, leading the pack in everything, leading the pack in drills, running the fastest, jumping the highest, getting around. And man, I knew immediately, I got to get me one of them super shirts. And, some people take the competition and the trash talking well. Some people don't. And, I was out there killing it. I was crushing it. But, the upperclassman that awarded the shirts, he didn't like that I was trash talking while I was doing it. And, he made me wait a little bit longer for my super shirt.
How'd that make you feel?
Oh, I was undeterred. And, I'd be like, boom, 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 boom. It's like, yeah, so Mr. Lance, when I'm going to get my super shirt? You see me out here? I know you see me. I would, I had to put that mister on it first, and everything. But, I was undeterred. It was like, when you going to recognize this? When you going to give it up? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to give it up. He gave me my super shirt. I mean, I earned it. But that was a case in which a guy was like, yeah, the trash talking kind of bothered him a little bit. But,
you mentioned trash talk comes from confidence and confidence from preparation.
Yeah.
So talk to me about work ethic and how that developed and how has that shown up in your life and, what you've gone to do.
Yeah, work ethic is important. What I've learned, as I've gotten older, over the years as a, not just as an athlete, but as a professional in my career and in business as well, it is the work ethic. It's also how you manage your time and your space. All of that's important. There are age-old things that are, you have to work hard. There's no question about it. You want to be the best at anything, you have to work hard. If you want to be the best at anything, you have to get repetitions in. You got to get reps. And so, Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Outliers, and he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. Okay, so once you get your 10,000 hours in, if you're not the best, you're one of the best. And so that's that preparation, that 10,000 hours, very important. Very important. How many free throws did Magic Johnson shoot as a kid? My dad used to tell me that story all the time when I was a kid. So, Sunday morning, Magic was at the court shooting free throws. Nobody else out there as a kid. That's what Magic was doing. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. And so, I put that together. It's like, okay, well, that's why he's so good at shooting free throws now. Because he was out there by himself Sunday morning shooting free throws, not playing with anybody else. So, the work ethic's important. Reps are important. I think to be a really great competitor, I really believe accountability is important too.
What do you mean?
Well, sometimes you're not going to win. In every competition, there's a winner, and then there's I know we're not supposed to use this word today, and there's a loser.
Losers.
Okay? There's a winner and a loser.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just, however y'all feel about that, I'm sorry. That's just not sorry. Those are the facts. Mm-hmm. And, accountability is important. And I've seen that lost. People want to make excuses for not coming out on top. Parents want to make excuses for their kids not coming out on top. And they're demonstrating that to them that, but I had this and I had this. They can make excuses. No, accountability is important. If you don't get the result that you're looking for, if you don't come out on top, if you don't win, especially in a situation or a competition or an endeavor that you felt you should have won, the first thing you need to do is sit down and look at yourself. What did I do? How did I not prepare properly? What could I have done differently leading up to my competitive situation? What could I have done differently in the midst of my competitive situation or endeavor? Accountability is important. you can't look to blame anyone else. So blame shifting is not for winners.
Blame shifting is not for winners.
No.
It's a great one.
Not
a great
at all.
one. I have a scenario to paint for you. I want to get your perspective on it.
Okay.
You were faithful in the process. You were diligent in the process in preparation, and you did perform your best, but someone just did better. How do you reconcile that? When you did your best,
right.
You did everything you could. Let's say you PR'd in a race or something like that, and someone just ran faster.
Okay.
Then what? Then how do you look at that?
The way that I would look at that is like, okay, I got to get you next time. Okay.
You look at it as failure.
Yeah. I don't look at myself as a failure. I am, accountable to recognize that in that competitive situation or in that competitive endeavor, I failed to come out on top. It was a failure. But I don't look at myself as a failure because, you should never, no individual should ever look at themselves as a failure because that just kills momentum. That kills drive. That kills success. If you read Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, he talks about
Got it in there.
Yeah, he talks about all of the extremely successful men and women that have lived in this country, mostly men, because his book was written a long time ago, and they weren't really giving props to women like that, but mostly men. And he talks about how some of them failed repeatedly before they had success. So including people like Henry Ford, and I don't think any of us are ready to call Henry Ford a failure. So never look at yourself as a failure. So I never look at myself as a failure, even if I didn't, even if I was the loser in a competition. What I look at is, okay, what I got to do to get that guy next time? What I got to do to get that girl next time? What do I have to do to up my game? So it gets back to the accountability. And then, another thing that that I had a few instances with, over my developing years is not only just recognizing, when you've done your best, but you still, you still don't come out on top, you lose, is really recognizing when you yourself as an individual put yourself in a position. Let me say that again. When you put yourself in a position for other people or forces to dictate your outcome. I've done that at a couple critical times in my life and regretted it because it doesn't matter how well you prepare, how hard you go. If you put yourself in a position where some other person or force can dictate your outcome, that's a bad thing. So we need to be cognitive of those things as well.
Talk to me about one of those moments.
One of those moments would be, let me see. Let me pick a good one. Well, I was up for a promotion on a job. And there was a guy that who was involved in that promotion process. He was a senior vice president or an executive vice president, and I allowed myself. I was working very hard, leading a sales division. Was working very hard, and I allowed myself to get tripped up on some employee reviews that hadn't been done, and hadn't been done in a timely manner. I got behind on them. I mean, I got them done, but they were late, and he used that as an excuse not to promote me, even though I was 10 out of 10 on everything else, and the job encompassed a lot more than doing employee reviews. But he used that as an excuse to not promote me. Now, this guy got moved out to run another division, and then the new senior VP immediately promoted me. So, so the performance was there. I was getting it done up and down the ladder. I had employees that, appreciated me and the leadership that I was providing to them, where I'm out leading the charge, not standing back just telling people what to do. And then, senior leadership also. But this individual, it doesn't matter for what reason, used that as an excuse not to promote me. And, it turns out, he did have some kind of personal issue with me down the road. But, by not managing my time and my position 100%, I put myself in a position to not get promoted. I didn't blame him. Because if someone is just biased, not a good leader, jealous, a bad person, trash, that you have no control over that. They're going to do what they're going to do. What you do have control over is what you do.
How did you respond to that?
To him, I didn't, because he was, senior or executive VP. So I don't want to get fired. But when the new VP that came in that replaced him, senior VP came in to replace him, I did let him know, look, here's some of the accomplishments. I've been working towards this promotion. And his response was like, yeah, I don't know why he didn't promote you. And, that was my response to it. I mean, you can't stop working. You can't stop pushing. The guy didn't give me the promotion. I mean, what was I going to do? Sit there and pout, sit there and cry. I did unpack it, and it's like, okay, during my review, he said, you didn't finish all of your managers. I had managers working for me. So you didn't finish all your reviews. So, that's very important. You want to get promoted. Other people want to get promoted too. So I'm not going to promote you. Okay. So he helped me with my accountability. But even if he hadn't given a reason, I would need to sit down and unpack that and be accountable myself. Okay, why did I fail to hit the goal? Why was this a failure? I'm not a failure. Why was this a failure?
I want to touch on this again. Is that you're a hard worker. You put everything you did to 100%. You missed the mark on a couple things. Mm-hmm. You still had this goal of getting promoted, mm-hmm. and the executive VP said, we're not going to promote you.
Right.
Internally, when you walked away from that situation, you went back home. How did you feel? What was that like?
Oh, I mean, I was pissed. There's no question about it. Because I knew what type of effort I put into my performance. I knew what type of effort I put into my job. I knew what time, at that time I was married with young children. I knew what type of time I had spent away from home and away from my kids. So yeah, I was hot. I was hot over it. No question about it. And, I mean, if you want to look at it biblically, the Bible says it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be hot. But it also says, be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down on your wrath. So I couldn't allow my anger over not getting what I thought I was due to retard my progress, my effort, and, what I needed to do for the, 150 people that were working for me and, for my kids and, and everybody, my family at the time. So you got to keep going. You got to keep driving. And, you and I have had this conversation before. It gets to something else too. So yeah, I was very hot over it. And we got to remember who we are and whose we are. Because, it never fails, God makes a way. And, you can spend your time wallowing in anger. You can spend your time wallowing in disappointment. You can check out. You can become apathetic. And that's not what winners do. And especially when you're on this team, when you've chosen to be a follower of Christ, the game is rigged. The game is rigged. You always win. In the end, you win. It's like a game that's fixed. It's illegal, but with God, it's not. It's not illegal. The game is fixed. So the enemy comes at you. The enemy uses people to come at you, an executive VP in this case. It's okay. You're still going to win. And sometimes we forget that winning is our pedigree. Winning is our inheritance. And, winning is the legacy that Christ Jesus left us. And so, my birthday is on 8/28, August 28th. And I love that because Romans 8:28 says, for we know. It's because we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. So everything's working out for your good. And I was busy being hot. And meanwhile, in the background, God had the company buying another company and moving Mr. Bad EVP over to another division to run that new acquisition and putting a guy in place that was going to recognize my performance, my true performance, my efforts, and promote me. So, and then even if that didn't happen, even so, the game's still rigged because, another scenario could have been, me moving to another division with a promotion. Another scenario could have been me going to a competitor or another company with a promotion. So it's, so while we're competing, winning and sometimes losing, we just got to remember, that we're always winners. We're always winners. You're never a failure.
You mentioned we're on the winning team.
Yeah.
And you said the goal is winning. Mm-hmm. I will say this. You've already won.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
You approach the goal from a position of victory. I'm going to share a story, and it's actually, you mentioned USC. You mentioned USC. Of course, I went there twice. And it started because, of course, I grew up in L.A. Trojans, Pete Carroll.
Right.
My gosh. Devastation when they lost to Texas. Oh, my goodness. Complete devastation.
Yeah, that was bad.
It was hysterical.
It was really bad.
Awful. And, but I followed them, and I went to high school, was good in football and stuff like that. And it was time for me to do visits. And in 10th grade, my high school took a week off for the students to go visit schools. So first school I ever visited was ASU. I loved it. I was like, this is the first college campus I'm ever on. I'm like, this is great.
Right.
And then it was Cal Berkeley. Didn't like the North. Just the field, just didn't like it.
Okay.
Then it was San Diego State. I felt all right about San Diego State. I was like, I mean, if I had to, I guess.
Did Marshall Faulk go there?
Then it was
Marshall Faulk went to San Diego State.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then it was UCLA. I went to UCLA with my mom. Then campus is so big, we didn't even finish the tour. And I was like, okay, I was like, okay, it looks like a good school.
Okay.
And then my mom and my dad couldn't take me to my visit with USC, and I went with my uncle. I walked onto campus, sun shining. I'm like, this is where I'm going to go. I don't care about anything else. I'm going to USC.
Right.
I don't care. I didn't care about anything else. That was my goal.
Right.
I get to senior year, and I know my grades aren't the caliber of USC.
It's hard to get in.
And I applied anyways because I'm not about to disqualify myself.
Right.
I'm like, if it's a no, you're gonna have to tell me no. I'm not gonna tell myself
exactly.
No. I'm not.
Exactly.
And went in to California University. I didn't get in. I applied, didn't get in. And I was like, all right, this is a moment for me to really rebirth myself and be excellent in the way I know I can. And then got 9 A's, 1 B. And in that process, I was studying like a USC student and training like a USC athlete. I became the goal that I was aiming for, like right now, right then in the moment.
But you started that with accountability, though.
What do you mean?
You knew your grades were not solid enough.
Yeah.
So then you made the adjustments. You recognized it's not USC's fault. No, they're picking on me. They're not being fair. You recognize, okay, I need to study like a USC student, and I need to train like a USC athlete. That's accountability right there. That's introspection. That's looking at yourself. And, if we look at the New Testament church, you look at the Apostle Paul. Paul did a lot of introspection. Paul did a lot of looking at himself, to rise to new levels. So that's what you did, accountability.
Yeah. And I made a decision. And there was nothing that was going to deter that because I knew USC was for me.
Right.
There was no, and that's that feeling of, okay, I know, okay, I didn't, so got 9 A's, 1B that year.
Nice.
Broke the school record in library hours. And I didn't get in again. I applied again.
Wow.
I didn't get in again.
Okay.
And I call the admissions office and the lady says, like, Christian, it's just not time yet. If you do the same thing you did last year, this upcoming year, and make these adjustments to your personal statement, then you'll be in. And hung up the phone. Like 5 minutes, I'm like, oh my gosh, just pissed. I'm like, I'm gonna do it again.
Right.
Like USC is where I'm gonna go.
Right.
And I didn't quite do it again. I did 8 A's and 2 B's.
Mm-hmm.
But I made those adjustments and I ended up getting in. And I share that because that year, that second time, that third time I was applying, I knew I was getting in.
Okay.
I knew it.
Right.
There was no doubt. There was no anything like that. And actually, there's another story to that as well, because in order for like D1 programs to reach out and to communicate with other athletes, they have to release themselves from that program. I wanted to contact USC. I wanted to be in contact with communication with USC. I wanted to be in communication with anybody else, but it was USC. That's the school I wanted to. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know if I was going to get in yet. So I had a decision to make. Do I release myself from Cal Lutheran University not knowing that I won't be able to go back? I think legally I probably could have, but relationally,
right.
You're severing that tie. You're
right.
severing that relationship. Do I risk the comfort I have here, or do I take the risk and release myself not knowing if I'm actually going to be at that place? And I'd already made my decision, but I called my mom. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all right, Mom, this is the scenario. I can't talk to USC unless I'm released. If I'm released, I can't come back.
Right.
And she's like, okay, yo, like she's different scenarios. I was like, yeah, no, I thought about that as well. I can't do it. And then after a while, she was like, all right, do it. Next day, I walk into the office and I talk to the head coach, man, and say, yo, like, I'm going to release myself from the school, and then did it legally. And he was really gracious with the conversation. But then I'm like, I'm released. Like I wasn't hanging out with the football players, like the dudes I used to go to battle with, because they feel like I quit on them.
Right.
But in reality, I'm like, I didn't quit on you. I'm just approaching it and pursuing something that I feel was greater within me. And eventually got in, of course, and that was an awesome process. And then there's a whole nother stuff that happened. But in that, there was accountability. There's also vision, and there's also like victory. Like I said, I knew I was getting in. There was nothing that nobody could tell. Also, too, I broke my own record in library hours again. So I'm saying that because like there is so much to be said about when like how you respond to no's. Like you had to know, I had no's, and those responses are often, and those no's are often like really like shaping us and redirecting us to the yes. And I know sometimes that sounds cliche, but this is like life, where I'm like, yo, okay, that's a no. Mm-hmm. But if I truly believe what's for me is for me, then why would I respond to this no right now as though it's the end all be all? Especially when you have a higher vision.
You don't. And you did two things. you exercised accountability. And when you did your accountability check, you said, okay, there's some behaviors that I have to implement, and there's some behaviors I have to change. So, you stepped up 9 A's and a B, 8 A's and 2 B's, and still didn't get in. But guess what? Somebody gets 9 A's and a B, 8 A's and a B. Is that person a failure?
No.
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 I mean, you didn't win. You didn't get the win that you wanted, but you're not a failure. Never, ever embrace, never embrace that into your spirit, that you're a failure. You readjust, take accountability, make an accountability plan, bring in some new behaviors, and get after it. But then you did something else that we haven't really touched on. And I think for winners, in every person's life who's consistently been a winner, they've had to do this at least one or two times. And we've heard the term, it's a little cliche, leave it all on the field. Okay? And sometimes you got to leave it all on the field. And that means sometimes you got to burn the bridge behind you so that there's only one direction for you to go. And to do that, you have to have the ultimate confidence in your ability. You have to have the ultimate confidence in the vision. You have to have the ultimate confidence in the Father, if you're a believer, that this is going to be accomplished. So when you release yourself, it's not that it was impossible for you to go back, but it'd be very difficult because, your teammates and the other coaches, position coaches, probably felt like the head coach understood, probably felt like, oh, you're quitting on us. And sometimes, that's great generals have done that before. You know what? We're going to cross this bridge, and we're going to raise the bridge now. We're going to burn it. We're going to cut it down. So we got to go and win. Can't go back that way. We got to go this way. And everyone who's consistently won has had to do that. Take that. I don't even really want to call it a risk. It is a risk, but it's a calculated risk. It's a confidenced risk. It's like, hey, I got this. I'm going to win. So I'm going to let this go. I'm going to let the security blanket go. I'm going to, there's no way for me to go back. There's only one direction. That's a winning attitude. When you do something like that, you are expecting to win. You are not expecting to lose when you do that.
Hate losing.
Yeah.
That was not, like I said, that's what I can describe it as, man. I just hate losing. I really do.
Yeah.
I hate losing. Like it was that, like I said, like I have just a drive and a vision to, like, I see things ahead of what I can do. I see things and I know that I can do them. Right. And I'm always constantly pushing myself because I just feel like for me, it's the only way to live. Yeah. Like I want to get everything out, in my life. I want to maximize my time here.
Right.
But you mentioned, okay, like, that the winners take those risks and burn those bridges in terms of like, okay, like the way back. Mm-hmm. What was that moment for you? Or was there, what was a moment for you?
I mean, there have been moments like that. There have been, more than one or two for me, in terms of, it became like a common practice for me. What do I have to do to make sure I go forward? And it could mean ending a relationship. Because it doesn't just, apply to athletics. It applies to
life.
Many different aspects and levels of life. And, so I've had to leave behind friendships. When I was, a teenager going into high school, I was running with a really, really bad crowd out there in the IE. And I had to make a decision, are you going to run with these guys, with these cats, or are you going to be everything that you can be?
Why'd you make that decision?
I made that decision because I wanted to win. I made it for me. I didn't make that decision because of my parents or a girlfriend or anything else. I made that decision for me. And I think that's an important part of winning too. Even though, a lot of times we're in group or team environments, you got to be able to stand on your own. to be a winner, because nobody else is going to be as dedicated as you. Nobody else is going to work hard for you.
Internally driven.
Yeah, internally driven. Nobody's going to manage your time and your space like you do. And I decided that my time needs to go in a different direction. My time needs to, I mean, I already knew I was, pretty smart guy, had done well in school and, in athletics. I was like, in leadership. It's like, yeah, I need to embrace that. And I need to let these cats go. Because, there was a lot of bad stuff happening around that time. And so I burned that bridge. And, I was only 13 at the time, but I did it like a man. I went and told them straight up, can't mess with y'all no more. And, and if you don't like it, we can get down right now, right here. Let's get it, because I got to go. I can't mess with y'all no more. And, so that's, that's the choice that I made at that time, was like, I want to win, and this isn't going to lead to a winning outcome. So I got to go in this direction. And, you burn those, you leave behind those things that are going to be a burden, that are going to weigh you down from winning. And, because you hate losing. And, to hate losing is not like an entitlement thing. It's not an entitlement thing. To hate losing, I don't want it to get misconstrued, is, I expect to get everything I want. It's not that kind of thing. It's, I've worked hard. I want to do my best, and, I want to see the results for it, the results from it. I want to give it up. I want to give up the glory for it afterwards. And, I don't want to give up the glory for coming in second or third place. Sorry. I mean, it's like, here, God, I want to give you the glory for my, whatever color a second place ribbon is, or third place. I mean, the first place is the blue one, or the medal is gold, Yeah, I want to give this silver to you, Lord. I want to give this bronze to you. No, man. I'm trying to give God gold. And, he uses me. He uses you to win that gold for his glory. We want to be thankful to God for everything, but, I'm not trying to offer God a silver or a bronze, man. Mm-hmm. And so it's not an entitlement thing. It's, winning is just better.
Got it. And the last couple questions. You stood in front of the crew that you were rolling with and said, I'm out.
Yeah.
I was literally thinking about the concept of quitting versus pivoting.
Yeah.
I see that directly, that concept and that tension right there exemplified in that moment. Talk about difference between quitting and pivoting.
The difference between quitting and pivoting is everything. We have to be careful, that we know that we can distinguish between the two, because quitting has everything to do with negative influences. Quitting has everything to do with apathy. Quitting has everything to do with a lack of preparedness. Quitting comes from being tired. Quitting comes from not being focused, because these are all things: apathy, not focusing, not working hard, that lead to poor results. And so quitting, you never see somebody quit when they're crushing it. When they're crushing it, it's because they're winning, and they're going to pivot to have an even more profound effect, whether it's just on their lives individually or on the lives of others or for a team or for a project. Quitting is that's the difference. If you look at your motivations, you look at the causes, if you want to blame someone or something else, if you look at the impacting factors and they're all negative, that's quitting. And that's the difference between quitting and pivoting. Pivoting is usually related to opportunity, increased opportunity. Pivoting is usually related to some type of growth within you, within a team, within an organization. So that's a major, major, major difference between those factors that usually impact the quitter. It's a totally different thing.
Yeah. Listening to you makes me think quitting, when a person quits, the reasons are usually about them. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I didn't prepare. I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. The results aren't what I want them to be.
Right.
Versus pivoting. Pivoting sounds a lot more about the goal and like the journey that you're on.
Right.
Versus, okay, something that we like. So it's like, to me, I'm like, people who don't prepare. You also have like the times as well, like the anomalies of like Barry Sanders quitting. Mm-hmm. I'm not retiring, not saying quitting, but retiring when he was still, the best back in the game. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to like this, again, quitting versus pivoting, I'm like, quitting, again, like I've listened to you, it sounds a lot about, again, like what we lack.
Yeah.
It's a lack mentality. And it's like, okay, this is difficult. So it's difficult. So it's too difficult. I don't want to go after it. When like a millennial mentality is like, okay, I see it's difficult. I'm like, oh man, I'm about to grow. Like I gotta grow to get this. But yeah. So in closing, we've touched on a lot. We touched on trash talk.
Yeah.
Pivoting, vision, accountability. Why do you feel moving forward? But why do you feel competition and the internal drive and perspective? Why do you feel like competition is a good arena for all of these things to actually come together?
I mean, competition is the opportunity to express all of the hard work, all of the determination. Competition is the opportunity to express, represent and manifest those repetitions. Competition is personally rewarding and enriching. That's what competition is. I know I keep going back to Bible verses. I think about the Bible verse in the Psalms, the book of Psalms, where the competitor, the athlete, David literally talked about, that looks forward to running his race. And why does he look forward to running his race? Because I've trained, I've done the reps, I've prepared, I've managed my time. When people wanted to distract me that way, I stayed, I managed my time. When, people or forces, physical, spiritual, otherwise invaded my space, I cut that off, I burned that bridge and went forward. And so the competition is the opportunity to express that. That is the competition. So it is personally rewarding, it is personally enriching, and the ultimate manifestation of that is winning. Is winning. And if you've done what you're supposed to do, if you're living the way that you're supposed to live in excellence, this attitude that's so pervasive today, that losing is okay. Losing is not okay. Not sorry. Losing is not okay. It happens. It happens, but it is to be avoided. Now, I won't say at all costs. We have to be fair and we have to be legal. But losing is not okay. Awesome. It's not.
Yeah.
Because, we have to practice things that allow us to lead full and rich lives. And the next step from saying that losing is okay is to practice a life of losing. And that's not going to be rewarding for you as an individual. That's not going to be rewarding for your children, your spouse, your family, your co-workers, or your community. So losing's not okay.
Amen. There we have it. Jesse Smith. What a conversation. Losing is never okay, and competition is a way to express. What profound statements from my brother, mentor, and from the Hate to Lose podcast. I'm your host, Christian John Bradley. We will see you next week.
Right. I'll be there.
Let's go. That was great.
All right, man.